The symbolism of the Wheel of Fortune in the Tarot. The Wheel of Fortune is the 10th trump card in most tarot decks. It has been included in the deck ever since the tarot's inception in the 15th century, after the medieval concept of Rota Fortunae, the wheel of the goddess Fortuna. For those on the rim of the wheel, all of our time on earth appears to be a frantic struggle governed by fate, fortune. And fate appears to be entirely blind to our predicaments. In some pictures, the wheel is turned by an individual wearing a blindfold. The goddess Fortuna appears to ignore the successes and failures of all those clinging to the rim. But the Wheel of Fortune is not about the inevitability of fate. It is describing the effects people will experience if they ignore their destiny, ignore the unmoving mover at the hub, and scramble and fight on the rim of existence for material successes. The rim of the wheel is for those who will endlessly transmigrate, that is, reincarnate, and go from one bodily existence to another, from birth to death, never seeking the calm of the centre of the wheel. They work themselves mindlessly, blindly seeking material success and pleasures whilst they are alive, like little mice on a treadmill, going faster and faster, but getting nowhere. And then they die, are taken from the wheel, only to be born into a new body and put back on again. They ignore the different paths or spokes to the centre, ignore the great work and the symbolic hand that turns the wheel, and are unaware that the faster they run, the more fate appears to be in control. The farther away from the unmoving mover one is, the more difficult it is to survive. On the rim they get constantly battered, but because they are on the outside of the rim, they never see that the spokes lead to a calmer pace of life, and one which has purpose and direction. The rim represents an apparently solid material world. Indeed, in many cards the four corners are occupied by figures representing the four elements: earth, water, air and fire. And the centre of the wheel may appear to be empty, but maybe it isn't empty at all. Maybe it is just invisible to all those unable to see the spokes and the route away from this thankless existence. So the Wheel of Fortune is really the wheel of misfortune for those who by their very ignorance or denial of the great work die exhausted, running and getting nowhere round the wheel. Battered endlessly by what they think is fate, but which is not really fate, but destiny ignored. The Sphinx. The Sphinx in practically all the cards is intended to be an overarching point of stability that is always above the other states of existence. It is the pinnacle of existence, and as a consequence the Sphinx equals the higher spirit. The Atman, Buddha nature, immortal soul, Holy Spirit, and so on. Serene and calm, it represents a human form that has mastered its animal instincts. The mind has mastered the body. It is usually shown on the rim, but uninvolved in the scramble of the other occupants. It may even appear human. Furthermore, in many cards it is shown with wings, and even next to the sun, symbolically the path of no reincarnation. In contrast, a number of cards show the moon opposite, the path of reincarnation. As such, it is clear from these cards that the only way to escape the wheel, this endless cycle of reincarnation, fate, and pointless drudgery, is via your higher spirit, the Sphinx. The four creatures at the corners. On the Rider-Waite card shown, though not necessarily all others, there are four creatures in the corners of the card: the lion, the ox, the man-angel, and the eagle. The prophet Ezekiel lived among the Jews who were exiled to Babylon in the 6th century BC, and it is from his vision that the creatures come. As for the likeness of their faces, they four had the face of a man, and the face of a lion on the right side, and they four had the face of an ox on the left side. They four also had the face of an eagle. They are also described later in the book of Revelation. And the first beast was like a lion, and the second beast like a calf, and the third beast had a face as a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. The animals originate in the Babylonian symbols of the four fixed signs of the zodiac and the elements. The ox represents Taurus, Earth. The eagle represents Scorpio, water. The man or angel represents Aquarius, air. And the lion represents Leo, fire. As such, these symbols indicate that the rim is composed of these elements: earth, water, air, and fire. In order to escape the rim, we have to extract ourselves spiritually from these elements, and this is Salvador Dali's card. Another way of looking at this is that the outward court of the cosmic egg is the rim, and the spiritual path aims to extract us from the elements. And show us a way of ascent via the planets that takes us nearer the centre. The letters. The Rider-Waite card is unique in having a mixture of Hebrew letters and English letters placed on the end of the spokes. But so prevalent is this design that these have sometimes been copied by other card designers. On the wheel, alternating with the letters T-A-R-O, are the Hebrew letters, usually transliterated as Yahweh, Hebrew for God. Some paintings of the wheel show Yahweh, God, as a central figure, the unmoving mover, the one who controls destiny and the great work, giving out scripts and receiving perceptions. The letters T-A-R-O, clockwise, or T-O-R-A, counterclockwise, can also be interpreted as R-O-T-A, the Latin word meaning wheel. In some tarot cards, there are also the alchemical signs, Mercury, sulfur and salt, as well as the zodiac symbol for Aquarius, and see our video on Aquarius. In the Rider-Waite card, they are shown on the spokes of the inner wheel. These alchemical states are related to the spiritual path, and see our video, An Introduction to the Spiritual Path. And these more complex cards then show a wheel within a wheel, which very loosely means turn away from the wheel of reincarnation towards God on the spiritual path by going through these alchemical stages. There is the outer wheel, which is the soul-destroying wheel of those who reincarnate time after time, and an inner wheel, representing the spiritual path. In essence, once one has torn oneself away from the rim and its material distractions, you ascend, using the spiritual path. The divisions usually correspond to the stages of the path. The one we use has 7 stages. But it is divided by 8 spokes. Notice how difficult this is to represent symbolically using a 2-dimensional card. The Mucha Tarot tries to get around this limitation by showing the spiritual path as a windmill, a cone of clockwise ascent, and the Wheel of Fortune is separately shown as a complex wreath, where the concept of this outer terrestrial state is represented by the hourglass and water. In contrast, this painting by Giovanni Battista Bonaccina in the 17th century shows humanity on the Wheel of Fortune, and Eros, our higher spirit, waiting patiently for its human to recognize that it will always be buffeted by the winds of fate and subject to reincarnation, shown by the scythe, as long as she chooses to stay on the wheel. The angel shows that such games are in time. All these allegories of wheels and wheels within wheels lend themselves supremely well to the idea of a life governed by fate, chance or luck, until one decides to leave it and follow a more spiritual life. The roulette wheel, for example, is yet another symbol that uses this theme, with the added symbolism that the dealer never loses. The creatures round the rim. There is no common symbolism for the creatures round the wheel. There can be many. Or few. They can represent mythical beings with a symbolic meaning, as in Aleister Crowley's card, or just humans on the rise and fall. However, this illustration from the book by Eliphas Levi, La Clé des Grands Mystères, deserves an explanation. In philosophy, Hyla refers to matter. The descent into the mundane, materialism or decadence. In contrast, Azoth was considered to be a universal medication or universal solvent in alchemy, and as such Levi makes it very plain that one descends by being materialistic and ascends by searching for a more innocent, spiritual and less materialistic life.